Hello, everyone. This is Matthew here, and today we are running a webinar about multi-location businesses. It's basically SEO and local SEO for multi-location businesses. And we've got some fabulous speakers for this webinar today where I think you're going to learn quite a bit about how to make your websites show up in Google and the search engines, as well as how to help them convert for local. I want to introduce our speakers today. First, we're going to start off with Bryan Eisenberg. He's internationally recognized authority and the pioneer in online marketing on improving online conversion rates, persuasion, content, and persona marketing. Bryan is also the founder and the CMO of Ideal Spot, and he's the co-author of the Wall Street Journal New York Best Time seller called Call to Action. It's one of my favorite books. If you don't own it, I highly suggest you go out and get it. In fact, we'll drop a link today during the webinar about that book to Amazon. As well, we've got George Freitag, and George started as an online writer back in 2007. That's funny, George. That's when I got my sort of internet marketing career started too, so there's some synergy there. And he's worked professionally in SEO since 2008. Since then, he's written for various sites about SEO, spoken about online marketing, and even created a few SEO tools. He's got a long, strong focus on local SEO. I suggest you check out some of his slides on SlideShare. They're excellent. And he's worked with over 1,000 small businesses across the U.S. and Canada. And our third speaker today is we have Enge. And he's the lead co-author of The Art of SEO, another great book you can pick up at Amazon. And Eric writes for Forbes, Search Engine Land, for the Digital Marketing Excellence blog, and he also speaks at many of the industry conferences. Eric is also the CEO of Stone Temple Consultant, which is a 45-plus person SEO firm. And then behind the scenes today, you've got myself. I'm the monitor. That's me. My name is Matthew Hunt. I'm the COO at Powered by Search, which is a full digital marketing agency of about 40 people. We help businesses, mostly enterprise, to be easily findable online, hence why we're hosting this webinar today about SEO and multi-location businesses, and we're picking the brains of some of the greatest internet marketers around. And behind the scenes, guys, we've got Avi and Joel and Goran, and really, we need to give these guys a big high five because they've done most of the work at organizing this event. Let's give them a big virtual high five. And just so you know, during the event, we're going to have Avi mining the chat, as well as they're going to be monitoring Twitter as well. And so if you have any questions about the event as you're going, please post them on Twitter or during the chat, and they'll be answering them. And at the end, we're going to leave some time to answer those questions. So just some cleaning house, guys, before we get into the actual questions. Today, this webinar is going to be recorded, and it'll be available again, it looks like on February the 6th on our blog, Powered by Search. So watch for it there, as well as anybody who attends will be sending the email with the deck and the recording of the webinar. So today, the topics to be talked about, or I guess debated maybe, hopefully debated. It's always fun when we disagree a little bit, right, guys?
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about common ranking problems for multi-location businesses, how to solve those problems. We're going to talk about optimization for those pages, like is it better for subdomains versus subfolders, things like that. We're going to talk about, reversing the effects of bad practices. There's a lot of businesses out there that are just, multiple location businesses that just aren't doing the right things, and how do we reverse that? And at the end, like I said, we'll have a Q&A, and at the very end, we actually want to poll you guys, the people attending, to see what you think of the webinar, how we can improve on them for next time, and what you might want to do. And if you take that poll, we're actually going to give away a $50 Amazon gift card to one random person. So without further ado, now that we've done some cleaning house, I say let's get right into the questions. So I'm just going to close out this and share our speakers again. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Can everybody see the speakers? If you guys can just out there let me know via chat that you can hear us, okay, and that you as well can see us speaking as well. If so, we'll get right into asking some questions. So gents, I'm just randomly going to ask questions to each of you in no particular order with the questions that we have here. Are you cool with that?
Totally fine. Yeah.
All right, let's ask this one to
use a lifeline.
George.
All right.
To our viewers, for people, just in case like they're on there and they have no idea what in the world multi-location SEO means, could you maybe just quickly explain what that maybe means, what SEO in a nutshell is, and what it would mean for a multi-location business.
Yeah. So, am I popping up?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so SEO just in general is just helping your website show up for more relevant searches and show up when people are looking for you online, doing whatever it takes to do that. And for multi-location specifically, what you're looking for is it's for particularly storefronts with various stores across the country or just across the city, and making sure that those particular stores show up as well in those local search. And so really effectively, you're competing at a national brand level or at least a larger scale level for multi-location SEO, but you've also got multiple storefronts that you're trying to manage, and you're also optimizing as a local level. And so really it's a way of attacking it from two fronts.
Cool.
I'd actually like to give it a different definition.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And I know Eric will know this from having conversation with me previously. My problem is, when we get focused in on worrying about rankings and all that. Yes, obviously that's a critical thing. But when we focus on the search engine and we stop focusing in on what we're actually supposed to do, which is, hey, our job is to make it easier for our customers to find us when they need us. That's our only job. I don't think we'll disagree, right? But I just think it's a mind frame of thinking about it. So if we don't worry about so much of the technical side, to say, hey, how do we solve our customer's problems? All of this kind of becomes much easier. And yes, of course, there's technical stuff we can do as well.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. I like both those definitions. So Eric, I mean, we haven't heard anything yet from you. Here's a question that we have on here that's on here, and and again, what is the difference between multi SEO versus your traditional SEO, or is it the same thing?
Well, I mean, if you look at the search results, like you can do a search query like I don't know, Austin hotels, since Brian's down in Austin. And you typically see two different kinds of search results. One is what you might call the traditional blue links or web links that have been pulled in. And nowadays you'll see a three-pack of things that have a different appearance to them, include things like a phone number and stuff it's just a different kind of looking listing. And it's really meant to be directed information so that the user can actually find a local business. These kinds of queries tend to show up when people, these types of results tend to show up when people enter queries that inherently have local intent. So it's really, what Google has figured out is that people want a sort of a different experience. They might just want the phone number right away. They might want the address. That might be all they want, right? So they don't have to go to a web page to get it. Google can give that to you in the search results. So that's a really basic definition of how they differ.
Right. I heard you talking about going from like the 7-pack to the 3-pack. Have you noticed recently that Google Maps section is getting smaller over time, or of late, or with any of the recent local updates like the Pigeon update or anything like that?
So my speculation is, well, first of all, Google has tweaked the number of listings in the X pack, 10-pack, 8-pack, 7-pack, 3-pack. But one of the big things that we can't really ignore during this conversation is the impact of these devices, right? And what Google has decided, in my opinion, is that the UI that they put forth is really going to be dominated by the needs of these devices.
Actually, popular demand.
Yes, well, I mean, they're collecting data from people on those kinds, from whatever device they're coming from. But the net impact is, it's really changing the way they look at things. And I'm sure what happened, just speculating, I don't have a live conversation with them to verify it, but I just saw that by reducing the number of listings to 3, it gave a better overall performance, and that's likely what's in play. It will probably change again.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you other guys there? You know, what are your thoughts about how mobile is influencing the way the search results show up, particularly for local SEO?
I mean, I think it makes absolute sense. Local intent is dominated mobile searches for a long time. It's at least, 50-60% at the minimum of those searches done on mobile devices has local intent, and mobile use in general is increasing. So just more and more searches are being refined in that manner, and it really is just changing the way local search is being done. We don't have that epicenter of the city, the centroid to go off of now, where we're really working with actual locations of individuals, and you really have to go out of your way to make sure that when you're doing any sort of local optimization, you're taking that into account. I think it's affected a lot. But visually, I mean, you've kind of hit it. They're just playing around. You can see Google playing around with those actual SERPs on a regular basis.
So guys, there's a question that was on our list here that was, and this was really more around optimization and each location web page. So I guess if you have a business, a franchise or a multi-location business that has hundreds or even thousands of locations, what are some of the fastest ways that these businesses can optimize those location pages to show up in local search, in Google Mail?
Well, so one of my key things again is every business that has a local presence should also be giving that local the people in that local presence some power to add content, to communicate on that page, to customize it. And I think when you empower more people to speak about what's going on there, you get away from the cookie cutter, generic, just computer programmed. Here's our list. Here's the hours. Everything's generic, and you give it a little bit of character. And once it's showing that it has a little bit of character and a little bit of real personalization and localization, Google's going to rank it better because it doesn't want to see 1,000 of the same exact page over and over again, even because you've just swapped address. It's exactly the identical page. They know it, and while it could solve their customers' problems, it's not exactly what they're looking for. So empower the local people to have some say of what goes on there and to localize the content on there.
Right. Bryan was starting to speak about creating something unique on these local location pages that would provide some sort of hook for the search engines to grab onto, instead of just having just your name, address, and phone number. I think a lot of franchises have these store locators, and that's all that's there. And it's not that they don't rank sometimes, but I think that there just needs to be a little bit more. So Eric and George, maybe you guys have some ideas on what these businesses could do to put on those store locator pages that would help maybe A, conversions, and B, as well, the user experience, as well as informing Google, the search engines, that it should rank for those local search terms.
Well, I think one of the basic things that you can do is there's probably some material things that are different about the location. If it's a pizza shop, there might be something that's different about how you prepare it in Seattle from how you prepare it in Boston, or what your offerings are. There may be other kinds of things that you can highlight that maybe your specials are different. Certainly your location is different, and having the address there is one thing, but something like next to the blah 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 building, right? These kinds of things. So what you want to steer away from is fluff, right? You don't want to just throw words up there for the sake of adding words. You want to add some real value so that the user is getting a benefit from this extra content you're putting on the page. Last thing you want to do is just manufacture stuff and fling it against the wall. That's old-fashioned SEO. That's should be shot.
Well,
So,
and so I mean, I think there's a couple of other things that we can also take a look at, right? And if you start thinking about from a utility point of view of the customer, right? Each store probably has unique inventory, so if you can actually tie into the ability of like the pizza shop has different menu from different places. Have it localized to there. Have the specialty to there. I was joking earlier with someone today. Google actually has a case study where they showed how effective Radio Shack was at localizing and optimizing for all of their local stores. Now, and I said, if Radio Shack can do it, no offense to them, right? But we know how much how much they're struggling, right? But what they did is they tied it back into, look, you know what? If I'm looking for a particular battery and I do a search and I can find the local Radio Shack, jump in, jump out, and I know they have it, do a click to call, right? All those kind of things help. And the other key thing, and I think it's part of what happens is, people are also thinking about the old world signals of this, and I think they miss some of the key signals that are going on, and Google's given some clues to this, and I've been talking about this for years, right? There are big data signals outside of links, outside of what's going on in citations, which we'll talk about, but things such as they're starting now to show you, how people have gotten to you from the map locator, right? They're starting to give you an approximation of that. They know those numbers better. Email signals, okay? I think it's a great thing if all the local stores can actually have some kind of localization to their own email. So if you checked out there and they send you an email receipt, make sure it's localized. Right? People seem to forget that Gmail is probably one of the largest SEO signals out there than anybody. There's so many people using it. If I keep getting confirmations, and by the way, who does this brilliantly is Apple. Right? You check out, they send you an email from the local store with the address, and all of a sudden, Google's, no, yeah, I was there. If they did a search, that's the way to start tying it together. So I think people have to get past that, that very simple name, address, location, and start thinking in a more holistic way of how to confirm that your customers are actually interacting with you and succeeding in getting their goals accomplished in your store.
Yep. Mike Ramsey did some interesting testing as well on that about driving directions as well as being a major signal. I thought that was really interesting too. But
yep.
Brian, you make some good points that it's not just about the NAP anymore, that name, address, and phone number. There's so many more signals and big data that Google can pull from to know if you really should be ranking or not, or if you are a local authority that people appreciate and use, because that's all they care about at the end of the day is the end user, right? So. George,
you do have to get the NAP right, though. I mean, you can't go past that. I mean, because there's a very basic reason for this, right? If Google sees conflicting phone numbers for your location, just to give a very simple example, they don't want to put your listing high up if they are potentially putting the wrong phone number with it. That's a very bad user experience, right?
Absolutely.
For Google, right? Absolutely. So it does still matter.
To have the fundamentals in place. I mean, you can't. You got to have the foundation set, and that's what the NAP is before you start building on top of that. And like Brian said, including all the stuff that's in your store is probably the best thing you can do. But then driving directions for major freeways is just is a really straightforward and pretty easy way to get some really, really relevant, unique content on there, and it's pretty. It's pretty realistic to be able to include that.
And it's user friendly, right? To have driving directions from major city centers, and they recognize that neighborhood kind of instruction. I think that's a good tip and a good way to create unique content for location pages. Yeah.
Right, and what you can do is you can create the driving directions based on ordinary mapping driving directions, but what you can localize, and like you had mentioned earlier, identifying the landmarks that they're going to see along the way, right? We're across the street from the Walgreens at such and such. You're going to turn at the Shell station, right? So once you start doing that, now you're starting to give it a little bit more personality and character, and of course that's going to change the way it looks.
And by the way, where you can find parking, right? Because sometimes, parking is hard to find. So the parking garage is just around the corner. Take a left on 12th Street. It's, whatever.
Right.
That's a great idea.
Especially if they're trying to drive around in something like Boston right now, right, Eric?
Yes. Well, in Boston, it says don't come here now. I mean, that's the answer.
I think those are great tips. One of the other things I see people do too sometimes is getting up as well, like that social proof, the testimonials or local social proof in some way. Yes. You know, it's another good way to create unique content for those location pages.
And location write-ups, right? So if you've been written up in the local paper or in the local penny saver, right, or the local radio, if you're running ads there, perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any other really unique way that you could create unique content for your location pages on those store locators?
Events.
Great idea.
Calendar of events. You know, retail is fundamentally shifting. You know, and when I talk about retail, I'm talking about retail service or product retail. We're moving more towards an event marketing or customer journey marketing approach. And so, yeah, being able to have localized events and content related to the events and people tweeting about the event there and embedding those tweets on the on the page, having that stream, all of that's going to provide unique signals that there's stuff going on there.
That's a great idea. It's a great way to maybe pull in feeds from your social team that's handling all the local events, and that might not be enough, and it might create enough new content to get fresh recrawling happening. George, you did a really good deck on event marketing. Maybe you have something to add around that event marketing as local content on store locator pages. Oh, I think you're muted yourself out.
Right. Yeah, the main thing, I mean, with event marketing, this is kind of getting out of the local arena, but there's just a whole bunch of markup that you can do around events, both in Schema or just in Google Webmaster Tools itself. But I mean, Schema is going to be the best way. And so, we haven't really mentioned Schema.org as just a tool you can use in general to help get some understanding on those local listing pages. So if you're doing events, you can use event markup from Schema. You absolutely want to use it on your locations, and that's just giving Google more and more data in the structured, neat, organized form that they like, that they can actually make use of and make sense of.
Right. When you guys are working with multi-location businesses, like what kind of schema are you finding that you're using on those store locator pages? If they allow you to do it, I mean, half the time I know they don't, but if you had your way and you could, what would you use?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to have all the location and organization related information on the pages. I mean, schema is kind of a funny thing because, as you say, a lot of people don't do it and aren't willing to do it, but Google knows that. So you want to look a little past that and say, okay, the lesson here is that Google wants that information on your page. So even if you don't have the engineering talent or can't get it scheduled in engineering to implement schema, look at the information called out in the schema definition and make sure that that information appears in clean text on your page.
Right.
Because we know that's the kind of stuff that Google's looking for. This is a place where a lot of people get caught up. Oh, I can't implement schema, it's too hard, or I can't get a schedule. But you know what? They are actually telling you what information they're looking for, and they know a very small percentage of people are actually going to implement that kind of a coding construct.
Hey guys, I want to bring it back for 1 second because obviously we're going to have people who join this call who are not SEO friendly, right? I mean, obviously, I don't do SEO every day as a living. My focus now is on helping businesses find the right locations with big data algorithms. So there's going to be a lot of people who are joining today who are not technical, who have no idea even what NAP means, what schema means. So let's make sure we clarify that for them and not just get into geek speak. Even though I'm wearing my Geek Fuel shirt today, man.
We don't want to do no. So that's a great idea, Brian. So why don't we take that to each person? Why don't we start just with the NAP information real quick? Who wants to volunteer to the audience who doesn't know what NAP stands for and what the importance of that is?
The NAP. So that stands for name, address, phone. And then really it includes website in most cases, and that's really the foundation of a lot of local SEO. It just has to do with when Google is showing a local business or an actual location in the search results. they want to be sure that it's trustworthy, and one of the ways that they determine trustworthiness is to make sure that that same business name, that same address, that same phone number and web page show up consistently throughout the internet, throughout the online spectrum. And so this really, so the number one place you need to have it is on those actual storefront pages. And I don't know if we've really nailed this point, but I mean, one of the most important things that you can do for multi-location businesses, and one that's overlooked very, very often, is to make sure that each location actually has its own web page that can be reached by the search engines, and then that in turn would be the primary location of the NAP listing of that particular business listing, address and phone number. And then you, of course, want to replicate it on the major directories and minor directories throughout the internet, like Google My Business, Bing Places for Business. I'm getting these names right, because they change them every other week.
Yes.
But Google My Business, Google Bing Places, Bing, Foursquare, all of those places are also going to be the places to make use of that NAP, is what it's called. So.
Right, and people sometimes refer to NAP consistency. You might hear that term, but that just really means that in all these places that George referred to, you know, the Google My Business, Bing Places, and then the major Yellow Page sites like yellowpages.com, superpages.com, every place that has address information about you, and of course your own website, all in the same format. That's kind of what that's.
Let me add one more source that a lot of people don't think of, and then I actually want to ask you guys another question. Don't forget also all the credit bureaus and, you know, the things like the Axioms and stuff like that. There is a high chance that some of these guys may, like the search engines, may actually use data from these third-party data aggregators in their algorithms to know volume. Very good chance that may happen. I know for a fact that Bing doesn't, because I've had that confirmed, but there's a chance that others might. So, yeah, you want to make sure it's there. The question I have for you guys is, because, you know, there's definitely people here who have, you know, IT staffs and web staff, but there are obviously people here who might have, you know, a chain of 10 restaurants or something like that who don't have that. How do they make sure, and what tools can they use to make sure they're getting that, you know, that NAP done and the schema done if they're not so technical?
That's a great question.
So yeah, one thing, I mean, yeah, there's so many different ways you can go with that answer. I mean, I think the first thing is you kind of have to decide how you're going to represent that, right? So what name are you going to use for the business, and make sure you're going to use the same name everywhere. You know, you have a few decisions to make, and then once you're done with that, you have to figure out the various places you want to go with it. There's some services that help you with this, third-party services, if you don't have the wherewithal to do it yourself. I know Moz Local is one of them. There are many others out there, but I think chances are that somebody with a really limited amount of time needs to employ a service like that and leverage that to their benefit. Again, for the smaller player. For the bigger player, it's kind of a different story. If you have 1,000 or even 100 more locations, you know, you're in a very different ballpark, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it really breaks down to sort of those data aggregators like Localese and Moz that can do it. Yext is kind of one of them that does it. And then you get into sort of, you know, if you're feeding, those are the ones that you probably want to feed. I think if you're a major franchise to begin with, you got to pick one to feed. Of course, clean your data before you send it out. One of the biggest things I see is, you know, multi-location businesses with not even clean data or clean feeds to send to these data aggregators. But that'd be the step one, you know, because if you don't get those right, even if you're cleaning it at the source, just like Bryan said, I think sometimes it can get overwritten because, you know, for example, in Canada, you know, yellowpages.ca feeds, you know, Google Places. So if it's wrong at Yellow Pages, you're going to end up with either two listings where you got inconsistency or something getting overwritten because they're taking a feed from somewhere else. You got to fix it at the source that's feeding it as the first thing. I mean, after, you know, claiming it all yourself. But then you can get into all the other ones, like the horizontal directories, industry-specific directories, regional ones, unstructured citations like blogs and so forth, right? But I think the starting place, and you guys can, tell me if you agree with me or not, but we want to start at claiming them at the major places like Google Places or Bing and Yelp, the major ones, and then we want to look at the feed of what's feeding them next. You guys, is that the way you do it?
Yeah, I mean, in rough terms, let's sort of take it from the top, right? So with Google My Business, right, you go through a process where you validate that a particular business listing it's actually about your business. That's you, right? And that gives you the ability to actually make edits to that and corrections and these kinds of things. Then, as Bryan alluded to, there are aggregators, and you mentioned it too, Matthew, is that you have Axiom, Localese, InfoUSA. The place that these people fill in the overall environment is they aggregate data, and they supply data to lots of other people, and that includes Yellow Page sites. And in some cases, the search engines might make use of that. It varies how they have handled that over time, but that data is available. So they can be very valuable in terms of getting a lot of, so that you don't have to go to each Yellow Page site yourself, potentially. At least that's the hope. It gets very complicated because what happens is that if you get something to Axiom, and they have some sort of update cycle they go through, and then Yellow Pages and Super Pages and whatever of these other sites that get data from them have their own update cycles. They might update their stuff from there every 3 months, or they might update their whatever, and so there's a lot of synchronization problems, and it could take a long time. Some services like Yext talk about plugging into the API at the Yellow Page sites so that you get relatively real-time updating. But you're still left with a problem that they don't always do a good job of eliminating duplicate listings. There's a little bit of a furball to this process, unfortunately, at least from my experience with it.
Do you guys have a preferred aggregator that you use when you're working with a multi-location business? Is there one that's your go-to? Like, do you prefer Localese over Moz or Yext, or do you use all of the above?
Well, Moz feeds into Localese and several of the other data providers, and so that's one of the benefits from that. I just find that Moz is still at the point where it's pretty. It's a lot easier for places with less locations, and if you're really have hundreds of locations across everywhere, then my pick is my personal pick is Localese or Newstar, which is their other name. It's the same company, Newstar Localese. And then maybe InfoUSA. I've switched back and forth a little bit between the two, but ultimately I tend to come back to Newstar Localese. The other one that we haven't mentioned, so those are the major providers, and there's also Yext. And the thing with Yext is that if you have any sort of citation problems on sites that are owned by Yext, then really the only way to fix those is to go through Yext. And so there's a case that there's some cases where that is actually very important. So it really sort of depends on it, but ultimately I'd go with Localese. And Yext is also a great tool for at least finding inconsistencies with your NAP listing. They've got a very good tool, just like Moz has.
So that's a good question, actually, about the inconsistencies. And I think everybody at this point understands what NAP is and how to feed these around. But what would if you have a multi-location business and there's a lot of inconsistencies they're out there in their name, address, and phone number information across the web, how would they go about, I guess, cleaning that up?
I'll just go ahead and start. So step one, the first thing that I ask any business owner is, what's your name? What's your business name? And for small businesses in general, maybe half the time they don't have an answer. It's pretty often.
They don't know their bloody name, eh?
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're working with like doctors' offices or very small businesses, or I mean, just even some larger areas just don't have a business name that they haven't really thought about it, and so they're pushed. That's when you have things pushed out like Chicago best skincare service or something like that. They're just hadn't had some sort of SEO set that up for them and never really took that. So your name and phone number is really the place to start. And once you have decided what you want your business name and the phone number, the local phone number you want to use and address, then you really kind of go down the line and like Eric said, with starting with Google and then going down to Bing and Yelp, and then moving over to a data provider is the process that I recommend.
Guys, have you guys so once you have that sort of sorted out, I guess, if you figured out what your name is.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Or at least what your customers are going to call you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. And then sorted out the sources of where it needs to go and the feed of where it needs to go. What would be the next thing that would be really important for a multi-location business to do? So we've addressed their store locators and some things that they need to do to tell Google why this page is local and it should rank. We addressed make sure they have clean information and that they need to claim it at the major sources like Google Places, and then get the feeds right. Once they've done that, sort of the ABCs, I guess, of local optimization, what should they focus on next?
So, I mean, I always focus on the same thing, right? What is going to solve the customer's journey? What's their pain point, right? What information is going to need to be there? What tool is going to need to be there, right? How are you going to address that? How can they communicate with you most effectively? Once you're there, everything else kind of falls in place.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's really important to. It's a really still, oddly enough, not fully appreciated aspect of SEO these days is the customer experience with the page. We don't know how Google might measure something like that if they're examining the text on the page, or they're measuring the user experience from a practical perspective with signals they have. However they're measuring it, it doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you just really want to have a larger percentage of people who come to your page be satisfied and get what they want than the guy next to you who's trying to outrank you. But that's a very crude way of expressing it, but
but I'm also seeing this happen with a lot of, and it's interesting because we've been doing a lot of work around what we're calling the social acceleration scores as we're scoring locations for particular businesses. And so, for example, we just did an analysis on Shake Shack, and it's interesting because if you do a search for burger restaurants in the different cities, the Shake Shacks that don't have the high stars, right, the rating reviews, don't show as high as like the one in New York that's got 4+ stars. And so I think one of the other things, again, right, that just ties to the bottom line. Reviews are critically important. The second you throw up a review on a page and a review to a location, it's invaluable. And it's a very strong signal that you're good at satisfying customers. The other one that we also didn't talk about, and I'm surprised we've gone now 45 minutes and we haven't even mentioned, especially because mobile is such a power driver in local, is how valuable video is today, right? Video and YouTube, and now that they're going to start adding some programmatic features to local search, is again another big powerhouse. Video speaks volume, so to speak, especially on mobile.
Interesting. So you think video is really, really important factor. I think the reviews for sure is absolutely important. What I think about people watching is maybe they're confused about reviews being, reviews where? In Google Places, on their local store page, on other third-party sites. Like, how should they handle reviews? Yeah,
so... Go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say the short answer is yes. So it's good everywhere. I'll just make one quick point about it. Is there is data out there that shows that a location with a few reviews, even if they're not great, does better than a location with no reviews.
Yep.
Right. And do you guys believe that there's any kind of review count that can make a difference? Like, is there a typical? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20?
So don't look at count. And again, it's part of what goes into our algorithm and identifying the locations. It's a velocity issue, and it's an acceleration issue. So I'm looking at how many positive reviews, where is it trending, right? As opposed to looking at, okay, here's just an absolute number, right? The web is not static, and so you've got to think about it as it's a timeline. Where is it going, and how do we start putting those signals together?
Right. So do you think places like Google are looking at even when reviews are done and the velocity? So if there's like a business who hasn't had reviews in 2 years, maybe they have 150 reviews, and another one who only has 10, but they've been sort of building up over the last,
couple months.
They're gonna maybe rank better, or it's gonna perform better just because they're newer, I guess, in the day, and the velocity is in the right direction.
Right. I mean, they're looking at the rate of successful engagement with your site, and there's many different ways they can
site and business. Wait, site and business, Eric. Let's make sure, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because it's a broader. No, we're not really fighting. We'll get to that. Bryan and I are perfectly happy to fight. Don't worry about that. But right. I mean, they're looking at an overall engagement picture, and just the review velocity is just a measurement of that, but it's an important one. It's a very discrete and measurable one, which is nice.
Which means videos, sorry to interrupt there, but I want to hear a little bit more about videos and images and how you feel that affects user experience as well as possible local rankings for multi-location businesses.
So I've been advising a company called Sitely for about a year now, and what they do is they have programmatic access to Google's to YouTube's localization and personalization part. And so what they've been doing is working with multi-franchise locations like a Massage Envy, and some furniture retails and stuff like that. Nationwide Insurance, those kinds of companies. And what's happening is, again, right, you can only have so much show up on a listing page. And so all of a sudden, if I can have a very personalized video show up as one of those top 3 things I see on my mobile phone, right, that's specific to a particular location, you know what? People don't have time to read, don't want to necessarily click through, but if they can see that quick video, that's one more signal. They can get engaged with it, they're spending time with it, and then head over there. It's a home run. So that's just another tool in our toolbox that we should be considering.
Right, but you do have to be careful how you craft the video, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, there's a whole experience thing going on, because they certainly don't want a 5-minute video. Yeah. It's what are the questions they're likely to have in their mind that the video can answer and get them on the road to what they want to do.
Yep.
Very, very cool. A very important process to get that right.
Yeah, cool. Content still is king, right? You got to have the right content.
Never changed.
And what about images? Is there a way to make your images work better for local, and what would that be? Like, how would you optimize images locally or for your local pages to influence and tell Google and your users that they're local?
I don't think you actually get a direct thing out of that, honestly. I mean, I don't think Google's going to see there's an image and draw an instant conclusion, but where you can get a real value out of it is take a picture. If you have a restaurant, take a picture which is really engaging and makes the person want to go there. So to me, it's use images so that you do a better job of drawing the user in. So that means they have to have information, they have to help sell in the soft sense here. I don't mean hard sell type stuff. Images communicate, and people respond to them. Google isn't going to be able to spend the processing power to, there's a fly flying in front of me, but they're not going to be able to spend the processing power to analyze what's in your image, right? I mean, they can look at alt tags and things like that. But to me, the most important thing is to use it as something to get the user engaged and decide to spend more time on the site, take that next action, and follow through with something.
Yeah, we found that one of the things that we try and get people to do. It's a little bit harder when you have 100 or 1,000 location multi businesses, but if you can do this and get your clients to do this, one thing, particularly depending on the business, is going and getting a Google trusted photographer to come out and photographer for your document your inside of your business, and then they'll put it on Google Maps, and
Hmm.
clients can go through the interior business, and it's really good for places like a cosmetic surgeon or massage therapy business. Like, people want to know what your facilities look like before they even get there. And as well as, because it's done by a Google photographer business, it pretty immediately tells Google that this business exists and we get to see the inside. I'm assuming they've tried to map all of the outside of the world. They want to map the inside of all the buildings and businesses if possible too. That might be a
Yeah.
good little tip.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on how you do this, but I know there's a way to create kind of a walkthrough experience
Yeah, that's
these days.
what he talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, George, did you have a comment on that? You were about to say something.
No, I mean that's what I was agreeing with you and making sounds.
Yeah, okay, and that's a very nice thing because it actually allows people to kind of work their way through your facility or location or whatever you call it, and gives them a bit more feeling of being there, and that can be particularly important in certain kinds of businesses.
Well, so one of my favorite examples of this. There's a franchise building out here in Austin, Texas. We're home to a lot of these restaurant franchises, kind of growing up. And there's one called Hop Dotties, and you can see directly into the butcher shop, into the bakery part of it, into the kitchen, and everything is, I mean, super crystal, clean. I mean, like, you could eat off the floors in that restaurant. And so, I've taken pictures of it to document the, how amazing it looks. And, those things start showing up in social media. And, those are ranking signals, right? And when you can put that up and, you have the confidence, you know what? It makes you feel a lot easier knowing that you can eat in a restaurant when everything is sparkling clean and stuff like that. And, the kitchen's not hidden behind there. So, again, what can you do to inspire confidence? What can you do to inspire trust? What can you do to make your customer have all their questions answered before they walk in your door? That's going to help you.
Yeah.
The other thing, sorry.
No, go ahead, George.
The last thing about images is that even if they're, apart from them being signals for the search engines or being any sort of solid ranking signals, they're just what people need to see. Like, they need to see that the business is there. They need a picture of the storefront, helps someone find it when they're looking for it. If they're driving there and they know what the storefront looks like because they've seen a picture of it online, that's going to help you offline regardless of what any algorithm does. And same thing with having good pictures on the inside. And you can tell, one insight to what Google is looking for is the information that they show, and you can always see that in those one boxes when you hover over a local result. It used to be in the carousel, but they're showing pictures because when Google does something, they're doing it because they've found through testing that it's important to their users. And so we know that users find those images important because Google keeps on showing them, and through their testing, they found that they get higher responses, but when they show images. And so that's just another reason, just outside of everything, is just it's something that people are looking for.
Right, and I guess like you guys said, it is a signal. I mean, all the photos being taken, like all these selfies out there, right? They're definitely being tagged where they are. Like, you can almost tag the facility that you're in or the business you're in as you're doing it, which is really interesting. Do you think that businesses and franchises should be encouraging their clientele to take photos at their businesses as a signal?
So the other day I was walking down, one of the main shopping areas in Austin, and of course there's an Urban Outfitters out there, and right into the front of the store that you could see this large photo booth, right? And there's always people going in and out of it. So yeah, absolutely, right? We're in a selfie culture, so every single photo has a geolocation tag to it today. When you're posting it, and you know what? The same way we're using location data, right, for our business, trust me, Google knows how to use it better even than we do, and it's invaluable to them. It's a signal. People were in there. People were legitimately doing stuff from there. If you send a tweet from there, right, they can pick up those kinds of things.
Right. So they should all have in their windows, selfies, please. Guys, we're getting close to the end of this webinar, and there was a couple questions that I want to ask that was asked by the audience that's here. And just so the audience knows that if your questions weren't asked as well, we'll be writing them down on the blog post and trying to answer them there or after the event. We won't be able to get to all questions, but there's a couple questions here that I wanted to ask. One of the questions here was someone was asking, should we be coaching our customers to try to include a location in their Google Places reviews? That's very, very specific. I guess the question is, should you coach people on how to leave reviews for you?
I mean, I know, Yelp discourages it a little bit. So you'd want to be a little bit cautious about how you're doing it. It's interesting. There's someone was introducing me to a new startup that what they're doing is they've built a platform that makes it easy for people to leave the reviews, and then they syndicate it from within inside the store.
Like Give 5-Star Reviews is one, I think, by Mike Blumenthal, and
yeah,
there's them out there, yeah.
And there's some that using video and stuff like that, so that you can syndicate. So, yes, and those will geolocate, because yes, it's obviously harder to get them to do it once they leave the store than if they're there. So, I think that's definitely going to be going to be a more common thing that we're going to see in the near future.
Yeah, I think passive encouragement is what the search engines and the IYP sites would prefer, because they don't want you saying, hey, if you're willing to give us a 5-star review, give us a 5-star review and we'll put you in a drawing for a prize.
Yeah. You can ask for the review. You just can't incentivize for a good review is what you're saying.
It starts to be a little bit too much steering at some point, and then, so that's the fine line you have to walk. But encouraging reviews is easy. Like, I mean, if you have a little, iPad station set up and you could do it right there, or any number of different ways to do it, right? Encourage people to do reviews on the spot. That's a good thing to do.
Right. Okay, those are all great answers. I know we could go on about more tips about how to get more reviews for businesses, but there's a couple more questions I want to ask here that people were asking. I don't think we covered. One of them was, and I guess you can list it here, if you guys could only pick one tool to sort of leverage for multi-location SEO, what would that one tool you'd have to use be? How about we instead of say one tool, what are the tools you need to use? Open it up. Tell me all the tools.
I'm actually a big fan of Moz Local just because it's just a good way to get a snapshot right off the bat. It's one at a time, so it's definitely not for the multi-locations of hundreds of businesses. That can be a little bit daunting, but just to kind of get a snapshot of where you're at, what you're doing, it's really quick and it's easy, and the aggregator is pretty good. The other one, I guess you said one, so that's the one that I suggest first.
How about you, the other gents here? If you had a tool that you had to pick for local, what's that tool?
Common sense.
There you go. Common sense is a useful tool, but it's in short supply. So
it's not so common. You're right.
Yeah. Right. Uncommon common sense, or something along those lines. Yeah. I mean, I got to be honest. Certainly for small volume things, we definitely use Moz Local. As George said, we have some in-house tools that we use for multi-location clients. So unfortunately, those aren't publicly available. So it's not a good recommendation for the general audience, unless, of course, but we won't get into all that.
Oh, and if you're running your site on a WordPress blog, which a lot of these guys are doing as well, I would also add the Yoast SEO, local SEO plugin.
Just to get all the local schema done up correctly. Yeah. It's a good plugin. Yep. Great plugin. Guys, we're almost at the tail end of this webinar. I felt like this hour went by so fast, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface here. But what I wanted to do is, before we go, is I want everyone to know that if they had more questions, or they wanted to get in touch with you, or wanted to learn more about each of you, maybe you could just share with us, each of the viewers here, how they would do that. And why don't we just start in the order that we introduced you, Brian? How do people get in touch with you, Brian?
So number one, they can always Google me. I'm not too hard to find. I blog at bryaneisenberg.com. They can reach me by email at brian@idealspot.com. Of course, I'm on Twitter at the Grok and LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm not hard to find.
He's very easy to find. That's right. It's true. Eric, how about for yourself?
Well, I could start with the same answer, and I'm not hard to find either. So it's Eric Enge, E-R-I-C, and then E-N-G-E, if you need to know the spelling, because it's easy to misspell once you've heard it pronounced. I blog at stonetemple.com/blog and write in a bunch of other places. At Stone Temple is my Twitter, plus Eric Enge if you want to get me on Google+, LinkedIn. Hit me anywhere. I'll be there.
Great. And George?
Basically the same answer. Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn. I'm on all of those. If you find any profile with my face on it, I'll respond to it, and that's a good way. And then there's also I work for Portent, and so you can follow my blog post on portent.com or email me directly at george@portent.com.
Great. And I was the moderator to guys from Powered by Search. You can always go to poweredbysearch.com if you have any questions. I just want to let everyone know who's been listening that we will get this video up sometime early next week, probably transcribed. All the people who came in or opted to come into the webinar, we'll be emailing them directly about it and with all the information from the speakers. I do want people to know that before we go, there's going to be something going up by Joel. I think Joel's going to post it any time now. And it's a quick survey. We'd really appreciate all those that are listening if they could go to that survey, let us know what they liked about the webinar, what you didn't like about the webinar, what kind of webinars you want to have come up next. We need to get some feedback from you. What we're going to do is we're going to randomly pick a winner of who fills out that survey for a $50 gift card towards Amazon, which is great. And I suggest that you use that Amazon gift card to go out and buy one of those 2 books out there from our guests here today. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to speak to you again. Thank you so much for your time. I think we added a lot of value to the people that attended today about local SEO. And if they have multi-location businesses, I'm sure they got some amazing gems that they can go back and implement into their businesses. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.